Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Catherine. I am so excited to have with me today Lisa King. She is a pharmacist of 32 years, a life coach, and a best selling author. And Lisa, it is so good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, thank you because I know we've only chatted briefly in person. I think it was at the Fairy Tale Tea a couple of years ago. It's a fundraiser, but we have not really had the chance to have an in depth conversation about all the wonderful things that you're involved in. So I appreciate you making the time to join me and have this conversation.
Thank you. It's going to be exciting. It's fun and it's a holiday week, so all the better. Take a
Yes,
little time out
indeed.
to chat.
Well, one of the reasons why I really wanted to chat with you is because I just love your approach to, making tiny life changes. You say one step, one day at a time. You have to change your mindset, find your purpose, and achieve your dreams. And I just love the positivity in that message because as we've discovered through our lives and different events that have happened, sometimes tiny changes can make really big differences. So, I want to talk a little bit about how you reached the point of writing your book. It's called A Tiny Life Changes. You wrote this with your sister, Lauren Daniels, who is a friend of mine as well.
Yes.
She's also a life coach. I love that you both do that. I'm curious how you two came to this decision to write this book because as I was reading your background, you were described as the one who had her nose in the book and knew, from a young age you wanted to be a pharmacist, whereas Lauren was kind of the social butterfly and, has this village of friends. I know I've been witness to it. So
Yes, she
I know
does.
exactly that description.
Yes.
So did you grow up close? And at what point did you decide, what, let's collaborate on something really fabulous?
Well, both always knew we had a book at our heart. And so what we originally wanted to do was write like a really pretty journal because we're both journal girls. We love journaling and writing and what we love pretty books. So Tiny Life Changes, I have a copy of it here. It's pretty inside too. So we both had gone through a really difficult time in our lives right about the same time. So my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 35, and that's how you know a lot of Lauren through her organization, the Happily
Yes.
Ever After League that she started. But during that same exact time, my husband and I had gone through the downturn of 2008, which was a very, very difficult time for many people, including ourselves. But I really feel like that was what started me on a self development journey. And I took a very difficult time in my life, and it really became a learning lesson for me. It really took me to where I am today. And I just feel so much more grateful for different things. And the same thing with Lauren. She really felt she learned a lot through her breast cancer diagnosis. So we kind of wanted to put pen on paper and write a book. And so Tiny Life Changes was born from that. And then it was just really about just making those tiny changes because, as Lauren said when we were talking about writing the book, a lot of times she couldn't even take it one day at a time. A lot of people say take it one day at a time. She said a lot of times it was 1 hour at a time, one half hour at a time. And so, really, when you break change down into tiny steps, it's so much more. Um, you're able to achieve more because it's not so daunting.
Well, it's interesting because I know that I've experienced change in various different ways. Sometimes it's change that I didn't expect and it's a little scary. Sometimes it's change, where, say, for example, in this pandemic, I'm experiencing so many changes on so many levels, which are positive, but again, didn't expect. So, what tools did you come up with for this book where you could teach people that, there are ways to approach change, whether you look for it or not, in a successful way?
Well, one thing we always say is that negative thoughts are weakest when they first appear. So one of the things that it's kind of a resounding theme through the book is that when you start having those thoughts, it's time to just flip them around. And so even for myself, a lot of times I actually had chronic pain for many years. I often share about my own journey with interstitial cystitis, which is painful bladder disorder, which the funny thing about it is I didn't even really think about that when I was writing this book. But really, just for women that I talk to, a lot of times, if you're in a lot of pain and you aren't able to, interact with your children and you start thinking, oh, I'm such a bad mom, turn that thought around immediately. Like, no, I'm a really good mom. Maybe I'm in pain right now, but I can read a book at night. with my children, or I can still sit down and have a snack with them. So whatever it is, just take that thought when it first occurs and turn it around into something that's a little bit more positive. And that was something that really actually was very helpful for me as well, even when I was going through that downturn of 2008, to just kind of put a stop to that thought right when it first appeared.
And was that something that you came to learn right away, or did that take time? And how did you discover that? Because again, in reading your background, I know that that was a really difficult time for you. You were enjoying staying at home, raising
Mhm.
your kids, and then with the crisis, the financial crisis that happened, you returned to work that you love, I should add, but it wasn't necessarily in the time you probably wanted to do it. And so,
Exactly.
we do get into these ruts where we're thinking about why me, and why is this happening, and then you know days later, years later, whatever it is, we look back and we think, now I understand why that was happening, because I had to get from there to here, but it doesn't always make sense at the time. And so what was it that made itself prominent for you, or revealed itself to you, that you discovered, just a little mindset change can make all the difference in the world?
Well, for me, it was really just delving into self development. And even we share in Tiny Life Changes that I said that I had books everywhere. So I had self development books everywhere. And I think there's like a little joke or meme or something that says self development is like showering. You have to do it daily. So for me, it really was something that I needed to do every day, because I really could very easily go down that rabbit hole. And I know in life, there's so many difficult things that happen to so many people, but for me, this was a very difficult time. As you said, my youngest was 4. I was a stay-at-home mom. Everything was going really well. I enjoyed staying home with my children, and I wasn't really expecting to go back into the pharmacy. And it was 12-hour days. I was very tired, was having that mom guilt. So, really, whatever it is for you that keeps you on that path to not having those negative thoughts, that's what I really recommend for others as well. It may be journaling, it may be listening to podcasts, it may be reading. So it really can look like so many different things. Um, but do whatever it takes for you to keep moving forward. So that's really what we're about in Tiny Life Changes as well, to keep moving forward towards whatever your goal is. So even if you have a bad day, even if you have those negative thoughts, that doesn't mean like, oh my goodness, my day is ruined. Just take up from where you are and then just keep moving forward. Turn it around and keep moving forward.
And when I was reading the reviews of the book, some of the folks talked about the fact that they love that it was, it kind of mirrored a workbook in a sense, and
Yes.
that they felt, sometimes we read self-improvement books, and they're very lengthy, or they're very cumbersome. And this was an opportunity where people can read it and actually take an active approach in that moment, right?
Yes, and we've had that come up quite a bit. A lot of people say, I read it in one day, or I read it in one afternoon. And so, one thing about Tiny Life Changes is that it is very easy to read. It's a very easy to read book that's filled with great reminders of things that you may have heard before, and some things may be new to you. And I know, as someone who does read a lot of self development books, a lot of times I'll get a book and then I'll think, oh my gosh, it's 200 pages long. I don't know if I have time to read it. But this is just a very simple book, simple reminders. And I think there's just something for everyone in there. So whether you're very new to a self development journey, or you've been on that journey for a while, there's really things in there that you may think, oh, I've seen that before, but I kind of forgot about it. And it's a great reminder for you.
It's a great motivation too, for sure. I've been
Mhm.
listening to a ton of podcasts lately, and it just inspires you to want to do things, whether it's for yourself or for others, or the combination. Self-development is so important, especially as we get older. As I mentioned, you've been a pharmacist for 32 years, passionate about health and wellness, recently named Single Care's most influential pharmacist of 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, that was very, very exciting for me.
Yes, congratulations. And this year,
Thank you.
it's been full of so much change for so many of us. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. But, it begs the question of, for people who are enduring these various levels of change right now due to the pandemic, and all of the things that come from that. It can be a lot of stress at times for many of us. So from a health and wellness perspective, is there a healthy way to approach that kind of change when it is forced upon you?
Yes, I mean, I just posted about this yesterday. I think you just have to do whatever is best for you. So if that means doing nothing one day, then just do nothing. I mean, I'm a type A personality, so I'm always on the
Me
go.
too.
But yeah, Saturday I had best intentions of, having a plan to decorate this year. I haven't started decorating yet, but I'm like, I'm going to get a plan. I'm going to know what I have. I'm going to know what I need. My body, I woke up and I was really tired, so I just did nothing. And so I think we have to give ourselves that grace. So from a health and wellness perspective, just whatever it is that you need to do. So if you need to rest, rest. If you need to sleep, sleep. Whatever it is, just listen to your body. Excuse me. Um, a lot of times your body will whisper to you before it screams. So really, if your body's saying it's tired, just do what you need to do, but really incorporate that self-care. I think that's what's really important right now. And I know with Tiny Life Changes, every Tuesday I had, and you were one of our Tiny Life Changes
Oh,
Women of Change.
this
Yes,
was going to
thank
be
you
my
for
next
being
question. So go ahead.
okay. Yeah, thank you for being a part of that. But it really was just important for us to show women who are making change in their own life and change in the world, because this is just such a time of change right now that no one is really used to. There's just so many things going on right now that we've never experienced in our lives.
Well, and I love that you created this. So, just to give people a little background, it's on your Instagram page, and
Mhm.
it's Tiny Life Changes, Women of Change. And so you give this opportunity where you highlight, various women from diverse backgrounds and perspectives to talk a little bit about, what Tiny Life Changes means to them, or how it's influenced them or impacted them. And I love getting these different perspectives of how women have approached tiny life changes. So thank you for doing that. Have you discovered a common theme among the women that you featured so far?
Well, I think all of them just really are open to the change. So I know the funny thing about it is, even though I'm a co-author of Tiny Life Changes, I'm very resistant to change. I don't like a lot of change. But I think one of the themes with the women was just that they really were open to change. And then when they came across a difficult situation, they turned it into something that was positive. They tried to look for the light in the situation. And I think that's what a lot of people are really doing, even with the pandemic right now. It's very difficult. It's something that we've never seen before, but we're kind of finding the silver lining in it, whether it be being home with our family more, or just getting out and walking more, and, doing things at home, whatever it may be. Just look for that silver lining in the change.
I think that's one of the things that has carried me through this whole situation, is just finding those little blessings. And they are there. They definitely are there. It's just sometimes I think for many of us, it feels like a little roller coaster. Some days we're just like, oh my goodness, I haven't seen my friends in so long. This is depressing. And then the next day it's, oh, but look how much time I get to spend with my family that, maybe I didn't have time for before. So yes, it is giving gratitude and finding those silver linings, which I absolutely just love talking to people about, because I think we're all discovering that. You are very passionate about empowering women from, as we mentioned, a health perspective, as well as, just in life, but specifically bladder health. You founded ditchbladderpain.com. How common are bladder issues and overactive bladder issues among women? And is it among women of a certain age?
Well, the older we get, the more common. I mean, bladder issues are very, very common. For overactive bladder, 40% of all women will experience overactive bladder. It becomes more common as we age in midlife. With urinary tract infections, it's something that usually half of all women will experience at least one UTI in their lifetime. I have a diagnosis of interstitial cystitis, which is painful bladder syndrome, not quite as common, but interestingly enough, this all came about because I somehow mentioned on my Instagram page that I had this diagnosis years ago. I've been medication free for 17 years now. And when I was doing podcasts promoting Tiny Life Changes, someone asked me about it. And then it seemed like the word got out and everybody started asking me about my painful bladder syndrome diagnosis. And then I just started getting so many messages from women. And it's interesting, even as I share now, a lot of times women will follow me and I'll think, oh, that's nice. They're following me, they're commenting. And then they'll message me and say something like, I have bladder issues as well, or my daughter has recurrent UTIs. So it's something that I feel like touches all women, whether or
Mm.
not be that woman themselves, but maybe their mom, sister, best friend. So very, very common, but there's just so much stigma and shame around bladder issues. It's something that people just don't talk about. So one thing is that I've really given a voice to it, I feel like, which I feel like is just so ironic because I was such a quiet, shy child. And so for me to be talking about this super embarrassing subject is a little ironic, but I really feel like I really want to bring a voice to it because women really have to know that they are not alone. There are so many other women who have the same issues as they do. And there are
Mhm.
options, there is hope. And so a lot of times, even with overactive bladder, women don't even talk to their doctor about it. It's so embarrassing for them that they just feel like it's something that they have to live with, but there are options. So that's something that I'm very passionate about talking about.
Well, so how do you take your tiny life changes approach and, you know, marry that with getting women to feel more comfortable in talking about issues like this particular issue, and realizing they're not alone and that there are ways, as you point out on your website, to overcome bladder issues?
Well, I think that's one thing is just in sharing my story, it lets them know that they are not alone. But really, when you have especially painful bladder syndrome or interstitial cystitis, there are so many things that you can't do. And even for overactive bladder, there's so many foods to eliminate that really when you take it one step at a time. So if you can't give up the spicy foods, the coffee, the chocolate, the alcohol, just do one thing that you can do and then just keep adding things on. Even with when it comes to healthy living, sometimes when you look at it and you think, oh my gosh, I have to give up sugar, I have to exercise, I have to meditate and do all these things, it's very overwhelming. But if you say, okay, today I'm going to read labels on my food and I'm going to really try to stick with that American Heart Association recommendation of 25 grams of sugar per day. And that's what I'm going to do today. And then when that becomes comfortable for you, now I'm going to start adding in a walk. Or maybe it's just even to walk to your mailbox and then just keep adding on a little bit, 5 more minutes every day. But take it slowly because sometimes if you try to do it all at once, it becomes very overwhelming and then you wind up not really doing any of it. So really
Mhm.
that's the whole approach is the tiny life changes.
Oh, it makes perfect sense, a little bit at a time, and then it becomes so comfortable that, you're doing everything in one day and it's not so overwhelming. It's kind of
Exactly.
secondhand.
And it's really a journey. And a lot of women, will ask me, were you always like this? And I wasn't. I talk a lot about sugar reduction and healthy eating. And I was a mom who used to bake every single day for her kids. So it's really been a process for me. I started with certain things like reducing toxins in my skincare. And then I added in healthier eating. And then I added in more movement. So it was just definitely a process of adding things on as I went.
I'm the same way. I've been doing the same exact thing in the last year, and boy, it's just made a real difference. But you're right. If I would have tried to do all of that at once, it would have been probably a little too much. So,
Yeah.
my final question: what is the tiniest change you've made in your life that's made the biggest difference?
Oh my gosh, that's a trick question. I think waking up early and having time for myself in the morning. So I take time to really read, write a little bit in a gratitude journal, just have, a few moments of prayer, quiet, just having that quiet time by myself in the morning really just sets my day in the right direction instead of waking up in a hurry. So really, I think that's the biggest change that I've made that's made this, I guess it's a small change, big change that's made the biggest difference.
Well, you've inspired me because that's definitely something I need to start doing. I always set my alarm early. Oh, today's going to be the day I'm going to get up early. And then I hit snooze way too many times.
I know I'm like very early to bed, early to rise. So that is one thing. But I know honestly, and I really have been, especially during the pandemic, um, trying to take just that time for myself first before heading on to emails, social media, whatever it may be, but really just taking that time for myself first.
Great advice. Lisa King, thank you so much. Such a
Thank
pleasure
you
to
so
talk to
much
you.
for having me. Thank you, Catherine. Have a
Well,
great week.
well, thank you. I want to remind people that they can find out more about the book, Tiny Life Changes, at tinylifechanges.com. You also have the website if anybody wants to reach out to you about bladder issues, ditchbladderpain.com. And then, as you mentioned, you kind of encompass all of these wonderful things onto your Instagram page. So I invite people to go there and follow you at The Fulfilled Pharmacist. And they can also see all these fabulous women you feature on Tiny Change Tuesdays. So thank you, Lisa. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching Conversations with Catherine. Please remember to hit the subscribe button, like, and comment while you're here. I'll see you next time.